Hello and welcome back to the port. I'm the Gallop Major, and today we're going to be discussing a question that has been floated numerous times by numerous people. And I guess the question in hand is the game dying? Quite a lot of people will say that, in their opinion, the game is dying, the game is stale, and other things like that. But we always have to be a little bit cautious when we tackle such a question. Quite often, some people can be trapped inside echo chambers of people with similar views and things like that. That's one of the downsides of potentially being a YouTuber with a community, is that you'll obviously have people who like you and have a very similar style to you become part of your community. And therefore that means, unfortunately, if a community contributor or even a creator, a content creator, has a certain view, it's potential that their community may have the same kind of view, and therefore the content creator in question will end up having a false feedback loop. They think the game is dying, they mention the game is dying, their community says the game is dying, therefore the content creator believes the game is dying. And Wargaming never really likes to release numbers. Unfortunately, World of Warships Legends being a console game, it's not like we can just open up the servers and keep track of how many players are playing like you can with World of Warships PC. So when it comes to actually getting data on how many players are participating, how many players are playing World of Warships Legends, there's only one source we have, and that source is unfortunately straight from the horse's mouth. That is Wargaming. Now, Wargaming has released numerous data information, I guess you could say, relating to number of participants in previous seasons of Ranked, Arena and Brawl. However, they usually keep their cards quite close to the chest. They never ever answer the question what is the size of the player base, and to be honest, when you have a free-to-play game like World of Warships Legends, it's very hard to actually determine what is the size of the player base, because the player base, obviously, do you count that as just how many people have the game installed? Is that how many people boot up during a week? People come, people go. Some people may take weeks breaks, sometimes even months breaks before playing another game. I'm sure many of my own community come and go almost as they please, and I do that myself, I have to confess. So when it comes to the information, we only have what Wargaming has, and they have been releasing information rather steadily, I guess you could say, since September 2021. Unfortunately, we don't have any information before September 2021, so we don't have any information of how many players started up with the game and how many players then continued with the game through lockdown and things like that. We've only really got information on the player base as we come out of lockdown. Now, those numbers do start off quite well. I mean, the first number that's released in the 15th of September 2021 is a player base, or number of participants, I guess you could say, of 208,834. Now, that number on its own is quite impressive. However, strangely, the player base numbers drastically drop thereafter. Apparently, the participation in the following season of Arena drops to only 58,204. Now, the 200,000 participants number does crop up again in August 2022, but never appears again. So we've only got 4 data sets which show a player base within the 200,000s. The rest of the time we're looking in the 60s to high 20s, even 80s. Now, but it's potential that those data sets from August 2022 and early September 2021 are oddities, are rare cases, or are incorrect. Now, the chances of them being incorrect, I kind of feel, are quite likely. Firstly, because they are so outlandish in comparison to the rest of the data. And it's possible that maybe by number of participants in these cases, they weren't talking about number of players who played, but potentially maybe how many times people played, as in like the actual number of games, which might make a bit more sense. So if we take all the data sets from early September 2021 all the way through to early June 2023, we end up with a graph as such. Now this graph, first of all, you can see there's a bit of a general trend, and we'll talk about that general trend. But yeah, you can see that those oddities really do stick out. So what I did to bring those oddities more in line was I found that by dividing them by a factor of 3, brought them down more in line with the rest of the data. So by doing so, I end up with a graph which looks, well, firstly, a lot more stable. It doesn't look like 150 players suddenly pick up the game and drop off the game. And by 150, I mean 150,000. And we end up seeing potentially a bit of a trend. You can see that the game appears to have a reasonable rate of growth from September 2021 through to about August to September 2022, which would seem fair. It seems to be a constant level of growth. Now, it's worth mentioning that with each of these groups of data sets, they reflect different seasons of Ranked Arena and Brawl. And generally what happens with those seasons is that the tier goes up as the seasons go on in each patch. Therefore, the number of participants will naturally go down, mostly due to players having less of the higher tier ships. So, for example, you'd expect a higher player participation for a ranked season at tier 5 compared to a ranked season at tier 7, and the same would go with Brawl and Arena itself. So obviously really have to kind of take an average of each little data set, but you can kind of get the trend. So from that September 2021 through to September 2022, we do see a steady growth in the game. It's incremental, and it's kind of slow. We've got a good amount of players, I guess you say. We're starting at about 58,000, and we're going all the way up to somewhere in the region of about 80,000 players participating in ranked Brawl and Arena. Now, it's worth mentioning that not every player is going to play ranked, not every player is going to play Arena, not every player is going to play Brawl. However, you would expect the players that do participate in each one would be a general representative of the community. So where you could potentially say maybe the player base is 2, perhaps 3 times the size of these numbers. So we could be looking at, say, anywhere between 150,000 to about 240,000 players, and that's probably me being a little generous saying that it's 3 times the size. Potentially it could only be 2 times the size. It's very hard to work out what percentage of the community does play these separate game modes. However, you'd think those numbers would stay consistent. If you're someone who plays ranked, you're generally going to continue playing ranked, and same with Arena and Brawl. However, one thing you can note is obviously from September 2022 through to May, even June, I guess you could say, 2023, there would appear to be a reduction in the number of participants, which potentially may also result or reflect a reduction in the overall player base. Does it mean it for certain? Potentially not. Potentially it could just be that the community has grown tired of these separate game modes, has grown weary of playing them. Perhaps the rewards are in the gutter and players aren't willing to actually bother picking it up. But also it could also reflect player numbers. The reason being is if you're not going to be bothered to pick up and play ranked, you're potentially also not going to be bothered to pick up and play standard. And so in some regards, when the people say the game is getting stale, I'm playing less of World of Warships Legends, and people come out with the statements such as World of Warships Legends is dying, perhaps the data is there to reflect it. Now, with the addition of fleets to the game, to clans, potentially clan bans in you've got a clan that battles in the future, I dare say, and hopefully, fingers crossed, training rooms, although we don't know how far around the corner that would be, perhaps this curve, this negative trend can be turned around. In some regards, as a long-term player of World of Warships Legends, I sometimes do shake my fist at wargaming and say, why don't you do more and things like that, and can you stop over monetizing the game and other such things. But at the same time, I'm still here and I'm still playing, and I can only hope that obviously they can keep this game alive and keep it going, and well, only time will tell. Now, I will also continue to collect data as the game continues through its trials and tribulations, through its successes and failures, and I hope to maybe come back in the future with further data provided by Wargaming themselves, and hopefully maybe have a more positive, or you never know, more negative video. Anyway, until next time, I've been the Galloping Major. Stay safe, stay well, feel free to subscribe and like, and until next time, stay salty. Cheerio.
Hey, hey, clear the way, here comes the Galloping Major. Bumpity, 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 bump. Get out of the way there, you fellows, unless you want me to run you down. I guess this is the life. Now, hey, hey, clear the way, here comes the Galloping